Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by Jamboree. My name is Vineet Gupta. I'm one of the directors and co-founders of the organization. I've been with the organization for over 30 years. And over this time, I've watched many students apply, go abroad, study in the US, other countries. Today's webinar, as you all know, is related to visas, especially US visas. I understand that many of you who are joining us on this webinar may be applicants who are looking to go and study in the United States. What does this visa pause mean for us? What is the future of higher education in the US? How does it look like? So sharing that perspective along with me is going to be Sanjay Kaushik, as you can all see him on the screen. Sanjay is a professional who a large part of his career has been with the US Embassy. He was working there for 15 years, and post that, he started his own consulting firm, which helps students navigate the US visa process and also visa process for many other countries. So we'll be sharing perspectives. We'll also be sharing what you can do, do's and don'ts. We'll start by addressing the current topic at hand, because I can understand that students are most anxious about that. What does the current pause mean? Uh, how do you navigate it? So we'll start by addressing that topic. And then in the second half of the webinar, we'll also bring in some general do's and don'ts on the visa. How do you make a stronger visa application? What are the things to look out for in your visa interview? How do you make your application stronger? So all of that we will be discussing. For many of you who are joining in and who don't know about Jamboree, I just wanted to give a brief introduction. We are one of India's oldest organizations in study abroad. We are also the leaders when it comes to study abroad. We do both test preparation and university admissions counseling. Our admissions counseling, of course, is comprehensive and it includes guidance for visa, and we take help of experts like Sanjay to help students with their visas. Then further, we also do education loans, housing, so pretty much end-to-end solution. And this slide sort of gives a sense of our track record. We have some of the highest scores when it comes to GMAT, highest scores on GRE, on SAT, on IELTS, university admits. Our students go to top universities world over: Stanford, Harvard, UPenn, Caltech, Berkeley. Equally, in institutions like Cambridge, Oxford, LSE, in France, in Germany, in Singapore, many other options in Asia. So pretty much the world over. Scholarships, we have a high success rate on scholarships, and we have a very, very high success rate on visas, by the way, right? So that's a little bit about the organization. We operate 33 locations across 19 cities. And with that, I will hand over to Sanjay. Um, you all can also raise your hand in the middle if you have a pressing question. Otherwise, after the first half of the session is done, we will open it up to questions, and then we'll get into the second half and we'll have questions again. So for many of you who joined just now, my name is Vineet Gupta. I'm one of the directors and co-founders of Jamboree. Joining me is Sanjay Kaushik. Sanjay is a veteran in the US visa consulting space. He worked for the US Embassy for 15 years and then started his own consulting firm. Today's webinar is in two parts. The first part, we deal with the current pause in US visas. What does it mean? What do you expect? And how do you sort of prepare in this time? And the second part deals with what else do you need to prepare when you go for your visa appointment. So with that, I'll hand over to Sanjay. So Sanjay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Viniji, and thank you, Jamboree, for organizing such a wonderful webinar, even because we do all understand because of the pause, there has been a lot of stress among the students, and there have been a lot of information and misinformation which has been floating around. So the whole idea of getting together is to create that kind of sense that, it is just a pause. it is not stopped, so the pause would definitely be lifted. So let me share my screen, and then I could, give a little presentation which would, talk about various actions which have been taken and how do we navigate through that. And then we'll take on from there. Thank you, Viniji, for letting me do my presentation. Thank you so much. So, like we said, that the current situation is that the student visas appointments are paused. Why are they paused? Because they are now looking at the social media screening expansion, like any other government or an organization where they want anyone who's coming into the US, they should be properly vetted. The vetting and the name check, the process was already in place. However, they now want to expand this and vet all the students who's coming in through their social media. They want to figure out their alliances and their hardlining concepts. However, like I said, it is just paused, it is not stopped, which means that in the coming week, sometime, I believe that they would release the appointments and the students would start getting their appointments for visas. It is just a temporary thing. We will be discussing about how do we navigate the US student visa policy, understanding the implication and the strategies, and how to successfully navigate and then move on to the next stage of getting our visas approved at the US embassy. So, like I said, the current announcement was made on May 27th. It's a temporary pause for all students. The student visas includes the F visas, which is the F1. M1 are the one which are going in for vocational studies. J1 are for scholars, for exchange visitors. So all these three categories for now are currently paused by the US government. However, I will keep reiterating this that it is just a pause. It is not that they've stopped issuing visas. Anyone who's already gotten visa appointment is free to go take their appointments. And in the recent past, as we talk, like even today, I had 5 students go in for the visa interviews. All 5 were issued visas, right? So there's nothing that the policy has changed. It is just that it is a pause
And
for a
and
moment for
if
a
I
temporary.
if I may just come in, Sanjay ji, here,
Ji,
and for the
ji,
benefit of all students,
ji.
the US, the visas for you students going to the US started almost a month and a half ago.
Right.
And we are finding that the acceptance rates are absolutely similar to what they were last year. So it's not that less number of visas are being issued, or the acceptance rates are very, very similar. And as Sanjay ji said, treat the current pause only as a pause, and the moment it's lifted, appointments will start again. Sorry, Sanjay ji, back to you.
No, no, absolutely. I totally agree. And, thank you for bringing this up because a lot of students are probably thinking that, this pause would essentially mean a change in visa policy, which is not true. Because, like you said, and you also said that we've seen the issuances going as, what were happening last year or the last year. And even I've seen, the better results coming in. So, like I said, these three visa categories are currently at pause. The new appointments, are as currently not available. But what I see is like in the coming week they will start releasing the appointment. The existing appointments, the students, they should start preparing for the visa interviews and proceed as scheduled. So there's no delay in processing their visas as well. You know. So what is the rationale behind the policy? The U.S. government wants to figure out if anyone who's coming into the country, do they pose any kind of national security concern. So please understand national security concern, not that if you have let's say that some students who have let's say liked a meme or they have given a kind of a comment, that does not imply national security. It is only that you've not shown enough alliance towards a government. That does not mean that you will not be getting a visa. It is just so anyone who's going to the US probably, if you talk about masters, they all are about the age of 21 or above. So they have the voting right. So they probably have some kind of understanding, or whether they're centered or whether they're going in the right or on the towards the left. That makes no difference. So a lot of people have started talking about, let's say that should we delete our social media accounts? That's not the right thing of doing it at this point of time. Just make sure that what you're posting on your social media does not constitute as national security concern. That's the only thing that the US government is looking at, right? So what is happening is like the implication is only that the postponement of getting the visa interviews to be scheduled at this point of time. that is only increasing your stress and anxiety among the prospective students, right? However, coming next week or by end of next week, I believe that the appointments would start being released by the appointment and you'll start getting the appointments at the US Embassy. So please don't stress. In fact, this is the time where you should start looking at your own applications. If you look at the other side of the spectrum, the US schools in the US are also possibly pushing to meet the enrollment deadlines, because if they miss out on the fall, there'll be a huge financial loss for them as well. So it is not only that you are under stress, the US side of the schools are also pushing the government, their senators, their congressmen to reach out to the White House or reach out to the authorities at the Department of State to start, lifting the pause, which I think and I believe by next week sometime we'll see that the pause getting lifted with once when they put in their checks and balances in place. So what you need to do is you need to be informed. Regularly check the US Embassy and the consulate website. They keep posting their updates on that. Look at their social media handle. The US Embassy has a social media handle where you can check regular updates. And at the same time, like I said, this is the time for you to check your I-20. Look at the name, your date of birth, uh, your program details, the start date. If everything is correct, then go ahead and start filling your visa form called the DS-160. At the same time, make sure that you pay the visa fees, your service fees, and be ready to schedule the appointment as soon as the embassy resumes and start releasing the appointments. This is also the time when you can start looking at your social media account. And please do not start deleting your accounts. That's not a good idea. It is always important to be consistent. The visa law says that anything prepared for the purpose of visa is invalid. Now, if we talk about journal life, we all are on Facebook, maybe on Instagram, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe on X. However, if you start deleting all of that, that shows a red flag rather than saying that, this is positive. So please don't start, deleting your accounts. That's not a good idea. And at the same time, if you have your account setting as private, please make that public, because if they want to check those accounts, they would have the access to check those accounts. All right. It is also very important to have your professional presence noted on your LinkedIn, where you can highlight your academic, and your extracurricular activities and your achievements. It will only contribute to your visa application. All right. So make sure that you keep doing that regularly. Like I said, the resources, it is very important to go to the source. And the source is either you go to your college or look at the official website of the US Embassy and keep monitoring the updates on the social media handles of them. You'll keep getting the updates over there, right? So please don't worry. And at the same time, this is the time where you have to really start looking at how flexible you are. You can emphasize on what changes you can make in your profile at this point of time in terms of your visa application. If you fill your visa application form, if you believe that there is something which is not correctly mentioned, you can revisit your DS-160, review your DS-160, and then submit your DS-160 again. Like I said, be more proactive, start initiating your process and prepare yourself for the visa process. Fill your DS-160, pay your service fees, choose your university, look at the program that you want to go and study there for. This is the time that you can start actually preparing for your visa interview. And this is just a pause. And like I said, when we had hit COVID, everything was stopped, but then everything started off. So similarly, this is just a simple pause for maybe a week, week and a half, and then they would start releasing the appointments. So keep looking at your long-term education goals. Keep preparing for your visa interview. Look at how you can prepare well for the interview. This is, like I said, just a simple pause, right? So I'm going to end my presentation here.
Yeah.
On this,
So
we can
Sanjay,
take G.
Sanjay ji, I let me before I open it up, but let me just ask you a couple of questions related to this theme. And firstly, I totally endorse what Sanjay ji is saying. We've been watching at Jamboree as an organization. We've been sending students for the last 30 years. And there are times when visa policies are reviewed. I should also tell students that even last year or a year before last or many years, during this time, appointments get crowded and
Correct.
students used to face a delay in booking appointments. So you can treat this temporary pause in some ways is not very different, because it used to take 15, 20, there were periods of time, a week, 10 days, when one wouldn't get any dates and new dates would get released. Now, Sanjay, if I may ask you, when you say national security concerns, and you say, and you made a very good point that don't delete any of your social media handles, accounts, make them public. Uh, what are the themes you think fall under a national security concern? Would it be ideological? And I'm assuming they're ideological, but what is your advice on what would be some themes which may be of concern?
Viniji, most of our kids, over a period of time that we've been, veterans in this particular field, and we meet hundreds and thousands of students. And what I believe that, students and particularly Indians are very centered. We're not very hardliners.
Right,
We do not get into something which would actually, um, you know, damage the fabric of a particular country, or like the ideology, whether we're talking about the class system or whether we're talking about the religion, and moreover, like if you talk about the hardliners, those who are there to
right,
create havoc, you know. Um, so we're not like in terms of that extreme. If
right,
a student has a political ideology, that's fine. A lot of our students, those who are studying at JNU, they would have very strong views of a particular government. You know, and at the same time, any student who's an adult is also have the access to vote, right?
right,
So that means he has some kind of a bent towards a particular government. So having your views on political issues is fine, but if that uh, person is posting something which is going to be a national threat, you know, where we're talking about like your 9/11 stuff like that,
yeah, yeah,
then
yeah,
there's a problem, you know.
yeah. So, if I can broadly say that if you have extreme ideologies related to political activism or security issues, or maybe very polarized views on religion, those kind of things could be are the ones which could cause. And but as you said, most Indian students don't fall in either of those categories.
Correct,
Would that be
and
a fair thing? Keep away from political activism
yeah,
and just extreme views on
right.
any particular. Just refrain from posting any of those on social media. Maybe that may be a broader
That's
cluster.
absolutely, what you really pointed the issues correctly, saying that one should stay away from these kind of issues,
Yeah.
and I guess most of the students do.
But if in a student's social media profile or any of in the past, I mean, if there is something, do you think they could correct that, or you would think that don't even tamper with your past social media? I
So
mean, if there's one post out of 100, or maybe some things which you feel you want to really just sanitize, would you recommend that?
okay, so sanitizing at this point of time would be a knee jerk kind of a you know
Okay.
a behavior, which would then highlight, like
Okay.
I said, the government, anyone who's assessing those uh, social media platforms are also pretty seasoned people. They
Understand.
also understand. They would look at the entire thing holistically, not just one particular thing. But that also brings me to a point where a lot of students, when they're going and at the port of entry, when their um, digital, things are checked, like their laptops or their phones, the students should avoid, you know, talking to their friends in the US about how can I find a job,
I see.
you know. So currently, if a student is going to study there, they should only talk about the education system, the
Hmm.
benefits of the education system, how
Hmm.
the course content or the curriculum would really benefit them, rather than start talking about, will I get a job there or not?
Right.
you know so those are the key things that they can avoid now, and anything, like you correctly said, has been done in the past, and if it's like one off, right, that's okay. So don't just start going there and trying to wipe out that. And as in our experience, and as we've grown in the organizations or in the country, agencies can really really pull that out.
Right.
For them it's
Right.
very simple.
Right.
Right.
And maybe we'll take some more of that in questions.
Hmm.
Uh, if students have any questions at this stage, and then we'll quickly get into the second part, which is really the general preparation for visas, right? Before we get there, if anybody has a question, you can either put it on chat or you can raise your hand and we can also unmute you, right? So Tapan has a question. Okay, Sanjay ji, they also are talking that can you clear any concern about OPT removal? There's been a lot of buzz in the media that whether OPTs will be cancelled, etc. Maybe let's take that. What's your view on that?
Okay. So as of now, if we talk about the US parliament system, any policy, there can be an executive order, you know, but if that executive order has to be turned into a policy, like removing of the OPT or reducing of the OPT, it has to go through a proper process, like in our government, right? It has to be first, tabled at the government, at the parliament. The parliament has to then review it. Then from the lower court, from the lower parliament, then it would go to the higher one, and then it would become a policy. That would take time, and we've been hearing about that, but I don't see, because a lot of organizations in the US and a lot of universities in the US are opposing the entire concept of removing the OPT, right?
Right.
So at this point of time, I don't see that going, you know, and if it's going to go, it will take some time.
Yeah, can also come in here on the OPT issue. This topic about OPT, by the way, is not new.
Right.
Now we have a change of administration and new leadership. So some of these things are coming more in the press. But I can tell you every 3 years, this topic crops up because, as Sanjay ji said, that this law has to be passed through Congress and the Senate. And in the United States, any senator or any congressperson can introduce a bill, but that doesn't mean that bill will find support. So there have been many instances in the past where this OPT bills have been introduced, but it's not that they have seen the light of day, and all the time they have been rejected. I've been watching this for the last 30 years. I've only seen the OPT getting more relaxed. Earlier, it used to be a 1 year OPT. Then with STEM, it became a 2 year extension. So STEM OPT is 3 years. And the US technology companies, especially, are very, very dependent on the international talent. So there's a strong need for US organizations, the US universities. The entire excellence of US academia has been built on their ability to attract the best talent from around the world, and they will not let that talent be impacted, right? So I would also say that on the OPT issue, I would tell students not to worry, right? There's lots of things coming in the media, and that is actually creating more anxiety. That I should also tell you that I have both daughters. Two of my daughters study in the United States. One just graduated this year from college, right?
Right.
She graduated this year from college, and she graduated in a non-STEM degree, and she has a job and her OPT has just started, right? My elder one is already there and she's been doing her PhD. Both have been there for many years. And the anxiety on the ground there, or the reality on the ground there, is far different from the anxiety we hear. Okay, OPT question I've answered. Financial aid will, I think, continue to be available. We maybe some research programs, especially bio, etc. Some financial aid may be impacted, but more or less it's continuing. There's another question from Vishal Chabra. Haven't got I-20 from UCSD despite submitting document 40 days ago. Is this delay normal? Not able to get any response from the college uh, despite multiple emails. What's your sense on this, Sanjay? It looks like a very localized issue with.
Correct. It is nothing to do with the policy, the
Yeah.
pause. It is just could be that, this is the time when actually the universities are probably flooded with the applications and they are sorting them out. And maybe the second round, so he would be getting his response soon, I'm very sure.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are delays, but be rest assured you will get your I-20 in
Yeah.
time for sure.
Yeah. Another question from Dr. Vishal, my recommendation to you would be that just reach out to UCSD. Just continue to be in touch with them, and you should get your I-20 soon. Aditya Reddy is asking, can you tell me what are the rate of students from Jamboree had got their visa from your last batch? So our visa rates are very high. 95 to 96% of our students get visa. We are one of the highest in the country. It's not changed this year,
Yeah.
right? And Sanjay ji deals with many more students even beyond Jamboree, so maybe he can also talk a little bit about that. But let me brief students also at this point, and we will get into what other things are important for your visa. The social media thing has only come now.
Right.
What are the other things that are important for you to get a visa, which have been there for the last few decades?
Right.
Right? What is the embassy looking at when they give you a visa? Those things have been there for many decades. And there, the quality of your profile, the university that you are going to, financial documents, and we will talk about that in the second part.
Yeah.
So we don't see any change in the rates of those visa. But Sanjay ji, you want to comment?
Like you correctly said, I mean, it. So I keep telling students, it is not the university that qualifies. It's not that what is the percentage of visas that get issued. It everything boils down to, because US visa is purely based on interview. So how the person goes in and presents his case at the interview is very important. Let's say on a given day there are 100 students, and all the 100 students are able to articulate their answers. They're able to present their case well. All those 100 would get a visa. I also get a lot of questions saying that what is the quota for visas? There is no quota as such. You know, so there is no quota that's saying that so my counter is like on a given day, let's say that they only issue 30 visas. That means they've got 70 to be given. So they cannot just distribute those 70, right? A person has to qualify by showing his intent. So we'll come to that point when we start talking about, like, what goes behind the visa scene, what are the visa officers looking at, what is the visa policy, what is the
Yeah.
visa law. We'll discuss that at length as well.
Yeah.
So that
So
will
just stay on. I request all of you to stay on because there's lots more that goes into the visa than your social media profile, and we will be talking about those things. Question from Nikhil. Sanjay ji, I've added my LinkedIn and YouTube account in social media section in my DS 160, but I use Instagram too. So should I add that as well?
Well, when they say social media, that means any platform that you're on. It is good for you to mention all of that, rather than they saying that you are also present on all these social media platforms, right?
Right.
So at that point of time, it will be extremely embarrassing, and it may go not, it may go otherwise. So I would suggest that anyone who's now filling their application forms make sure that they mention everything correctly.
Right. So you
And I
would
would
encourage people to really mention all of their social media handles.
absolutely, absolutely.
So Tamanna had a question. What could a student do to leave a good impression on universities, putting aside what to avoid, rather what we can build on? I mean, the universities are really interested in good students. And what are good students? Students who have good academics, good extracurricular activities, good scores on standardized tests. That's what good recommendation letters, that's what universities are looking for, right? So go back to the basics. If you go back to the basics on what is your admission dependent on, your standardized test scores. Even I would encourage students, even though some universities are saying testing is optional, this is the time to really write the test and prove that you have good scores. So good scores on testing, good academics, good recommendations. So really the merit of your entire application is what universities are impressed with. Sanjay ji, you want to add here
Yeah,
anything?
definitely. I was waiting for this. Now, I always highlight this point that a student must appear and take those tests, because when the visa officers are actually looking the application, even if the university has waived off the requirement for a test. Now, what is the visa officers looking at? In that 2 minutes, they're looking at whether a student is a legitimate student. So when I say legitimate student, what does that actually mean? Have you done the prerequisites? You know, have you taken those standardized tests, even if it's not required by the college? It is very important, not only for a student to get into a good college, but also to prove at the visa office that you are a legitimate student by saying that I took my GRE test or my GMAT test. This is what I've scored. Based on that, I looked at my universities. So even if the officer is not asking you whether you've taken a test, when he says, why have you chosen this particular university? You need to bring that up to show that you're a legitimate student. So very important. And Vinitji like pointed out, the not only the universities are looking at those good credible students, but also during the time of the interview, it is very important to present that.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you. Uh, we'll come back. Manjunath, we'll come to your question later once we've done the other criteria. We'll just deal with the social media questions. Should I add Snapchat in the social media section? There's another question from Radhika.
Look, like I said, anything that you are on a social media. So okay, so another thing very importantly, uh, when you're filling your visa application form, so let's understand that the visa application form, when you submit the DS 160, once you finalize that, when you submit your application, it stays in the system for 99 years.
Oh,
Now, the interesting thing is that a lot of students come and say that, sir, I've got my brother there, and I don't want to mention it because it may show that I have intent to stay there, right? And then I ask him, what will you go and study there? He says, sir, I'm going to go and study computer science and data science, to specialize. I said, then you want to go to the US to study data science and computer science. What is that used for? To search the data and provide the right kind of information. So when you fill in your form, you're mentioning the name and date of birth of your parents. Your brother would have also done that, and it will automatically show up. And believing that the American embassy will not use that system here, that's kind of absurd. So what I'm trying to say is, let's say that you don't mention your social media now, but while in the US, if you're using that social media, and then so there's a whole lot of system which goes into it. So
got it.
cutting it short, please do mention whatever social media platform you're using. Do mention that, please.
So, Varsit, I am assuming your question is answered that what will be the consequences if we don't mention any social media handles, even though we have any? I mean, clearly Sanjay ji is advising don't do that. This is information for 99 years, which is pretty much our lifetime. So,
Yes.
um, you know, so do mention your social media handles.
Yeah,
It may go against you if you don't, and you do have.
yeah, right.
Okay, another question which is interesting from a panel from a attendee whose name is A. Ray. How long would the officers go? How long in the past, maybe, is what she's saying, Asmita Ray. How long would the officers go in the past to check content? Is it like 5 years, 1 year, 10 years? What's
Look, so how far can Google go and check a record?
Hmm,
It's the answer is as simple as that. So once the system is in place, it's going to dig out anything which is there, right? Now also understand, when we talk about students, undergrad students or master students, their lifespan, or when they started using their digital, equipments, would be about, let's say, 15 years ago, or maybe a little longer. So about 20 years is a very simple, mathematics for them to pull out the records, right? So once the
right,
system is placed, it will pull out all the records.
right, right. Okay, so you're saying it could go as long back.
Yeah,
Technically, it could go as
definitely.
long back,
Yes,
although more recent, maybe more attention, right?
right.
Now, will there be a decrease in the acceptance rate of internationals in Harvard? That's a very speculative question, Ashi. I don't think we can comment on that. I mean, it's already legal. While the administration did, revoke international students, but the courts have stepped in, so the students are still there. We don't know how this will play out, but this is very specific to one university. I really can't comment on that. My own view is this will settle down. This will all settle down in a few months.
Correct.
This is not for the long term. This is very temporary. My own sense is this is a 3 to 6 month issue. It's also with Harvard, and this will settle very quickly.
Correct.
Snapchat, we've answered. Loan, we'll just come to. Uh, okay, Rutvik, you talk about brother being there for 5 years. Will that affect my acceptance? Sanjay ji, what's the answer to that question?
No, not really.
Not really.
Because
Right.
uh, anyone who's going for a visa interview, the officer is adjudicating him, as an individual, right? And if you are able to articulate your answers in the sense that you know what you want to go and do eventually, what are your professional goals, right? And on what basis have you chosen a particular college? If you are able to connect those dots clearly and indicate that you have reasons to come back, your intentions of returning to your home country, then I don't see a problem at all. In fact, we've had students, not only their siblings, but like, twins going and applying for the visa for the same time and getting visas. So it's not, again, how did your brother go to the US? How long has he been there? What's his legal visa status? All that would definitely matter. But if he's gone as a student and now he's currently on an OPT or an H1, that's okay. It wouldn't
Yeah.
impact negatively on your case.
Right. Aditya's question, application rates in US are declining and the government there plans to revoke Chinese student visas. Doesn't I definitely think so. This is a good time to apply to the US. You can get
Correct.
into better schools, better universities, absolutely.
Correct.
Sanvi saying I submitted my DS60 before the recent buzz about social media handles, so I only added a couple. What should I do now?
Well, so now you have the option of refilling your DS160 and carrying both your confirmation page. And during the time of the interview, if the officer points out, you can always present the new one. Say, sir, I saw that when I was looking at my application, I, you know, inadvertently missed out on a couple of things, so I filled out a new one, and it is absolutely acceptable.
Right.
It's
And you're
absolutely not.
saying, but if you filled out two, carry both the
Yes,
pages.
carry both the pages.
So
Yes.
another one from Asmita, does a political degree such as international relations lead to any kind of flagging? Absolutely no. The graduate school, no, it does not, Asmita, in any way. All degrees are absolutely welcome. It's really go back to the basics of what Sanjay ji said. If you've expressed views which are in the domain of political activism and they are extreme, if you've expressed anything on social media that could affect national security or extreme ideological or political, I think those are sort of red flag. What degree you are studying is not
Yeah.
a red flag. Let me just quickly pivot in because many questions are coming around finances, and I'm just sharing this presentation. Sanjay ji, I'll quickly go to the sections on,
Sure.
um, the financials and what other things to look at for the visa. If you can sort of just walk
Sure.
people through.
Sure.
So I think let's start with financial proof. What does that mean? Maybe let's start with this document preparation,
Right.
financial proof, and then interview preparation. Maybe let's do
Sure.
that. Let's start with
Okay.
here. So maybe
Sure.
we'll spend 10 minutes and walk you guys through all of this, and then we can take more questions. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So essentially, Viniji, even before I get into this, I
Yeah.
always like to tell students, when they start looking at going and studying abroad. So the first intention should be to go and study there. So that's one
Right.
that should be very clear. And when you're talking about studying, so your end goal should be absolutely clear that, if you want to get into finance, if you want to get into quantitative finance or computers, if you want to come back and work, let's say, with Amazon, so your end goal should be absolutely clear. So once you have an end goal clear, then if you start working backwards, as in like, if you want to, if you see there are certain skill gaps in your profile and you want to, go and study those programs to, then eventually go and get your best jobs that you want that you're looking at. So always start working backwards, right? So look at the career objectives, then start looking at the program that you want to enroll for, then the university, and then you do the shortlisting. And then once when you have all those things in place, then we should start looking at your visa application. So first thing is, of
Right.
course, you should have a valid passport. Now, the valid passport means that your passport should be valid for 6 months from the day you enter the US, not exit. So there's a lot of confusion in this. So which means that if you're entering the US in August, your passport should be valid for 6 months from August, right?
Mm.
So that's one. Once when you get the I-20, make sure that your name and your date of birth and the program details on your I-20 are absolutely correct, right? Once you get your I-20, then you need to start filling a visa form called DS-160. Now, let's also understand, most of the time, we understand and we assume that the I-20 is coming from the university, right? However, anyone who's received an I-20, if they look at the top left of the I-20, it says Department of Homeland Security and the USCIS, which means that two departments of the US are already involved in getting your I-20 issued. And
Mm.
when you fill the visa form, it's called the DS 160. It's called the Department of State. So now you've got three important departments involved in getting an I-20 issued and your visa issued. Now, the SEVIS is the Student Exchange Visitor Information System, right? Now, what does all this do? All this, like, there's a lot of buzz that, I will not get an appointment or the appointment's not being released. At the same time, let's understand that if there are two departments, Department of Homeland Security and the USCIS, and when you pay the service, the Department of State knows the number of I-20 is issued, number of people waiting to get their visa slots. So accordingly, they would start releasing the appointments, right?
Hmm.
So don't start getting stressed out that there will be no
And
appointment.
and maybe we can take a pause here, and you watch this for long, and so have I. There are times when visa dates could come out, but in the grand scheme of things, I've seen that eventually everybody gets an appointment and everybody
Exactly.
interviewed, and whoever has to get the visa does get it. Is that your experience, Sanjay ji?
Exactly, because like I said, USCIS and Department of Homeland Security are issuing 100 I-20s, but the embassy would release only 50. That's not
Right,
possible, no? Right? So
right,
they match up those numbers. So they have a system which goes behind it, right?
right,
So
right,
once you've done that, once when you then start looking for your visa appointments, in the interim, then you can start looking at the documents, right?
right,
Now, the documents, because you're going to go and study there, and if you've been working, then you have to have your academic documents like your 10th, your 12th, your bachelor's degree, your transcripts, your mark sheets. If you are still waiting for your degree to come in, then course completion certificate, or a bona fide student if you're still a student, and your six or seven semester mark sheets. And at the same time, if you've taken any test like SAT or the GRE or the GMAT and the TOEFL or the IELTS, if you don't have the records, take a screenshot and carry them when you're going for the visa interview, right? Now, financial papers, what documents you should carry, and what is the significance of those documents. Now, we also have to differentiate between the documents that you send for your I-20, because the I-20, the federal law is different. The immigration office, when you send your financial papers to the university, it is actually also going to the USCIS, right? Where the law says that the student who's coming to the US should not become a public charge. They need to show a document which shows that they have enough money that covers their tuition fees and your living expense. That's a federal law, right? However, when you're going in for a visa interview, the visa law says that you have to show strong ties to your home country. So
hmm,
when I say ties to your home country, one of them is your financial ties, right? So what is the financial ties? That is your family capable of not only taking care of your expenses, do they have annual income which is coming in, right? So how do you show that? By showing tax returns for the last 3 years. Now
and you
that
could do that for your parents as well.
correct, yeah. So they can carry their documents from the parents. When you carry documents from your parents, you're showing social ties,
Right,
right? So in order to answer that question, we'll come to that point, how to navigate the visa interview. But documents, when you're showing it for the visa, make sure that you carry documents of your family as well, bank statements for the last 6 months, any proof of investments, which could be fixed deposit, shares, bonds, mutual funds, right? And then also the property papers, just carry the photocopies of the property papers to show that your family is established here.
hmm,
And then if you have an education loan, carry the approval letter as well, right? So again, federal law is different, the visa law is different. Visa law wants to know, the visa officer wants to know financial strength of your family in India, right? Not just the availability, because the bank letter that you've sent in for your admission, that only shows the availability.
hmm,
Financial strength is also very important. And how do you
right,
articulate the answers? We'll come towards that as well, sir.
right.
Right. Okay. Now, interview preparation and common mistakes. That's one of the most fundamental thing. Like I said, if you have a storyline which talks about that what you eventually want to do once you return back to your home country, and then if you start building your answer based on that, then everything would fall in its own place, right? Like over here, it's very clearly marked that do not have your answers memorized. It should not sound vague at all. It has to be very specific, right? So let me give you an example, sir.
Hmm,
I had a student who wanted to go and do his computer science in the US, and his answers were all what they read on online, and they come with those answers. But then when we started developing his answer became very 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 good, because he wanted to develop an app where a person could pre-book a parking space.
hmm,
Now that's the problem that we all say. We all see this on a given day, right? So you see a problem and you find a solution, and how
right.
do you implement, you know, to develop that app and how do you market that product. That was the reason he wanted to go and study there.
Got it.
And if you can answer that, then it becomes very simple. So the officer understands that you've identified what's happening in India. Even without saying, I'll come back to India, you've shown the intent of coming back.
Right.
Right? So that's how you need to, understand and develop your answer. Why do you want to go to the US? Sir, when I travel with my parents, I don't find a parking space. So I want to develop a pre-booking of a parking space. I have this idea, but I do not know how to develop an app. And the most important thing about the US education is it's pretty flexible. I can
Right.
also enroll for management, right? Operations. And I can also study digital marketing over there. So
Right.
that once I return back, I can use this into developing my ad and make it more sustainable and profitable. And then the answer, everything, why have you chosen this university? Why this program? Right? All that becomes very simple.
Right. So really showing ties, financial, social, a strong inclination on why do you want to go to this academic program. And as you said, I'm going there to study, 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 and that's it. I mean,
Right.
get that. And then showing some connection on how you can use that for the betterment of your own country.
Right.
Maybe I think those are some big points I'm getting, right? So
Right.
I'll see if there are any more points or we can come
Yeah.
back to
So
question.
I also want to, mention here about the funding part. How
Yeah.
should we answer it? You know, so most of the students, if they're getting a scholarship or if they've taken an education loan, the first thing they would go and answer is, how will you fund yourself? So I've got a complete tuition waiver. You know, now for them it is very good, but now the visa officer is looking at the visa law. He's saying he did not show me that he's got financial ties to his home country,
Hmm.
right? Or if you've taken an education loan, that so as human we would hear the first thing first, and then a chain reaction would happen, and then the results would come according to what you've fed into my through an answer. So best way to answer that is to first address the visa law. How will you
Hmm.
fund yourself? So my family is there to support me. This is what my parents do. That's their profession. They have a current annual income of so much. We have savings and investment worth so much. We also own properties here. However, I've taken an education loan because we've done financial planning. I can repay the loan once I return back. I can get a lot of tax benefits. So it's financial planning on our part.
Right.
And then, if you've got a scholarship, then you can also mention, looking at my credentials, the college offered me a scholarship as well.
Right.
So that's how you articulate the answer.
But you're saying really start with your own financial position.
Yes.
And you're saying loan is not a no-no. You can talk
No,
about the loan, but at
look,
least
education loan
just
is
if,
of course,
yeah,
yeah, it's of course a good idea,
right,
because the officers understand that any institute which is going to sanction a loan would have done a background check. They would have looked at your credentials. They would have looked at your collaterals. Only then they would have issued the education loan.
right,
So
right,
it is of course a good idea to also accompany that with your
right,
financial papers.
right. Okay, so I think there's some questions which we can take. Murdula, do we just need to show the amount mentioned on the I-20 or do we need to show more? I think clearly um, as much as you can is my sense. Sanjay ji,
Correct,
what?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sir, there's also a confusion. Like I don't know somewhere. So two things here. It's a good opportunity that I could address a larger audience here. So two things. One is like a lot of students and a lot of internet, they say that when you're going for your visa interview, you have to show at least 1.5 of your I-20 amount. That's not true. Because most of the students, they would like to beg, borrow, and keep that money in the saving account and maintain that for 6 months. So the visa law says that anything done for the visa, for the purpose of visa, is invalid. If they're looking at the statement and there's a spike, right? So that becomes invalid for them. Okay. So
Mm,
whatever documents you have, you know, like if you have a fixed deposit or a PF or a GPF, carry all of those.
mm,
And the other, which is a very prevalent, in the last 15 days, I've been hearing this answer, that how will you fund yourself? My family has enough funds, all that stuff, and we have all these assets. However, if required, we can, dilute those assets,
mm,
right?
right,
Now, at the same time, you're saying that I've got my financial ties, but these assets can be diluted. So there's a
right,
contradiction,
right.
you know.
I
So,
see. I see.
right, so you don't have to go and say that, we go to, if required, we'll dilute that,
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Well, these are very, very fine nuances which you are bringing out very well.
Right.
I hope our students and audience can benefit. So I think one last question which Namrata has put: in my previous DS 160, I'd mentioned only LinkedIn account and not other social media profiles. Now my visa is rejected. Should I mention all social media handles? As I came to know, visa officer can see the changes in previous and old. Also in new DS 160, I don't have much changes to mention after rejection. What reason should I mention in DS 160 for previous rejection? As I got, she's written 214B, whatever that is. Yeah. Hmm.
Right, right. So yeah, so that's also a good question here, sir, because when you're filling your new DS 160, there's a question: has your visa been refused? A lot of people would just go and say that I could not present my case well, and my visa got refused under Section 214B. That's not enough. This is again an opportunity for you to articulate your background, why you want to go and study there, how will that benefit you, and what will you do once you return back to your home country, and then mention that I got refused under Section 214B. One again, because it's a very, very, what do you say? Um, I have to understand the personal background to
Right,
give them a right kind of answer. But
right,
don't just mention that I got refused under Section 214B. That's not enough.
right. Okay, one more from Nikhil. In my I-20, I've shown half of the required funding as personal funds from my father's account. Is my father required to maintain that amount
No, not
in his
really.
account till the interview?
No. So on the other side, if you have that money sitting in the account, and if the officer happens to see the financial papers, and if he sees that money has been in that account, unless you got like tons of money, that's fine. Otherwise he'll say like, why don't you invest this money in fixed deposits or anything place? So
Right,
he knows that you've kept this money for the purpose of visa. So you don't
right.
have to necessarily keep it or
Right. So
maintain
I
it.
think what I'm getting is really ties, financial ties that bind you here. Investments seems to be a good thing to show. Whatever investments for parents, your income, any houses you own, etc. I think these are all 100% scholarship. Ashi, you're asking. I think Sanjay already mentioned that. Uh, and we've
Right.
also taken an education loan. Maybe Sanjay ji, you can say that again. But
Right. Yeah, even if you've got 100% scholarship, because most of the PhD students are not only getting 100% scholarship, they're also getting paid for that. But still, it is very important to show your financial ties, carry financial papers, your property papers, and then you can show the availability through the scholarship. That's fine, but like make sure that you carry those documents with you when going in for the visa interview.
so I should also mention that, as all of you know, Jamboree does visa counseling as well through experts like Sanjay ji. So if any of you are interested to take help on visa counseling, you can leave